Hey guys, it's Jolene and I'm here to do my vlog for the day. For week 3 of the coronavirus. I'm wearing my Jesus Loves This Hot Mess shirt because it seems appropriate and maybe will seem more appropriate by the end of this video. I'm recommending this book for kids this week. It's called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's a book of poetry by Mr. Rogers. I use this a lot in my Sunday school class, and I hope that my neighbor's blower and chainsaws and things like that are not too distracting today. I'm also, and of course I don't have the book cover for this because I always take my book covers off, but this is The Road to Character by David Brooks. And David Brooks is a conservative columnist for the New York Times, so make of that what you will. So when I was thinking about this book for this week, by David Brooks, The Road to Character, I thought about some of the words that I shared some time ago when I originally read this book when it came out a few years ago. And it got me thinking along a tangent like things normally do. And so I ended up coming up with some thoughts I wanted to share. We talked last week about the stages of grief and how I think the coronavirus is bringing us through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages. And without recapping that, the final stage, which perhaps we are not yet all in, is acceptance. I think it's important to work toward that place, though, because in my personal worldview, acceptance is also the starting place of the spiritual journey. And I truly believe that we all have a spiritual journey ahead of us if we can find it. And this moment brings us to an opportune place when so much of us are sharing a collective experience in a way that we aren't normally. So in this collective experience, I believe that we are all in some version of the stages of grief, and that the sooner we can move out of grief, we can move through a spiritual journey. So today I want to talk more about acceptance and as it relates to The Road to Character, this book again by David Brooks. The book visits lives of the number of historical figures who've exemplified extraordinary character. And if you don't know me well, you may not know that I love history. It's part of what draws me to religion. I love history. I love tying the remnants of a memory of a person together and seeing what emerges. I think there's something mystical and mysterious about trying to remember the past because although there's a sense that something happens in a very actual way, there's also a sense in which our memory, our chosen memory of the past, determines how it lives into our future. There's a way in which historical memory shapes both the past and the future, however technically accurate it may or may not be. And there's a kind of creative magic in that, I think, if that makes sense. In any case, I love history. I love my family history. I love trying to imagine who my ancestors were. I love visiting old houses, going through old pictures, and mining members of my family for information. Trying to piece together the scraps of information I have about family members who I've never met and who are gone is difficult. But after a while, something starts to emerge. Common themes in the memories and impressions of my family members, marriage and divorce records, business and property records, and eventually Adelaide Josie Pierce White Knight starts to become Grandma Knight. Now, when I read David Brooks' chapter on Dorothy Day, I was particularly struck by her struggle with her body. Now, in her youth, Dorothy threw herself into protests, activism, and crowds of people that many in society would have looked down at that time. Dorothy had physical relationships that she regretted and would later express feeling like she threw her body around carelessly. She drank heavily. She struggled with the profanity of her body and its desires. And when I think of great figures of character, it can be difficult to imagine them struggling with those kinds of things, right? Like thinking like everybody poops, but like Mother Teresa? Like surely not her, right? So to imagine Dorothy Day struggling with her body, to me, was a unique perspective. And at one point, Brooks tells us that she goes to a friend's apartment on Skid Row, and her friend is suffering from a drug overdose. And while Dorothy's at her building, the police raid it, and they mistake Dorothy for a sex worker. Now, Dorothy and her friends are arrested and are made to stand in the street in their nightgowns. And as David Brooks explains, she was a victim of red hysteria at the time, but she also felt that she was a victim of her own imprudence. And it took this arrest, she took the arrest as an indictment of her scattered life. Now, Dorothy Day said, when speaking of her arrest, "I do not think that ever again, no matter for what I am accused, can I suffer more than I did then of the shame and regret and self-contempt." Now, society often dictates whose bodies are deemed valuable. Dorothy had profound struggles with the sacredness and profanity of her body. She went through a period in which she had trouble connecting the sacredness of her body with her activism and her work, and she was, in her own understanding, abusing her body. In today's world, I think we still have a lot to do, a lot of work to be done on the ways that we treat our bodies. Now, for those of you who don't know, about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, I found myself abusing my body. I was starving myself and abusing diet pills. And I don't think there's anything simple about how I got to that place. But I know that I internalized a kind of misogyny, and I somehow misconstrued that as a value. Now, there are voices from everywhere that will tell us how important it is that we are attractive. And those same voices are usually telling us what it means to be attractive, whether or not it's true. And as I navigated the feelings and worldviews that led me to my eating disorder, it was hard for me to find reasons to stop. I felt like I had to compare myself to magazines, to a lot of the figures that I saw in pop culture. And I don't have people photoshopping pictures of me. I don't have a personal trainer and a dietitian. You probably don't either. And even if you do, we all have different gifts and qualities and character. But as I absorbed those values and mean words from ex-boyfriends, I lost the sense of the worth of my body. I felt disgusting and like I couldn't get thin enough. And it didn't really matter how much pain I was feeling or how my own actions scared me, because I wasn't in touch with myself. I lost the value of my body. And when I did that, I lost the value of my spirit. I think our traditions often separate body and spirit as if they're at odds with each other. And I think in the modern world, we know that's not really true. Because when I stopped feeling like my body had value, I stopped feeling like I had value. And when I mistreated my body, I mistreated my soul. When I didn't love my body, I didn't love my soul. And in that truth lies what David Brooks and many of our biblical figures will tell us. Sometimes you have to get down to get up. And it's as if we get down low enough that we find the water table. And in that low place, we find that refreshing drink of something else. And sometimes it's through engaging our own struggles and suffering that we find within ourselves the power to rise up. And once you get there, you want to bring everyone with you. I think at this moment, in talking about acceptance, I think what this moment will teach us about acceptance will help teach us about what's beyond that place as well. Dorothy Day talks about how important it is that we leave our judgments behind. She talks about working with people with alcohol addiction at Catholic Worker House, and she stresses the importance of treating those people like everyone else, like people. They don't need more judgment, they get where they are in life. And she says that in the eyes of God, the hidden subtle sins must be far worse. We must make every effort to love more and more, to hang on to each other with love. And I think that that is one of the tricky things about acceptance, is when things are really big and severe, we accept them because there's not another choice. But it's in the small places that we don't accept the way things are, that we live in our ignorance, in our, perhaps our good intentions, but outside of reality. And so I think that's a really important thing for us to think on when we think about acceptance. Drug use might be an ugly thing, but the judgment of drug use is even uglier. Our inclinations toward judgment and the ways we might be inclined to shame other people in their bodies, they need to be an opportunity for self-reflection. When my brain goes to that place of judgment, part of me is saying I'm better than that. And I'm building this hierarchy in my brain, and I need to break it down. I need to catch whatever that thought is and reel it back in, because when my judgment is released out into the world, it's creating a distance between me and other people, and it's kind of hard to have dinner with someone from far away. What we are all going through right now, it brings us together as we are made to stay apart. Our bodies are all confined, endangered, afraid, grieving, and moving toward acceptance. Now, acceptance, again, doesn't mean complacency. It doesn't mean there won't be change, because if there's one constant, we know that it's change, right? And I guess taxes, but that's not really the point. In claiming our bodies and the sacredness of our bodies, there is an almost necessary correlation between our bodies and the bodies of others. If my body is sacred, no matter how perfect or imperfect our worldly standards are suggesting that it is or isn't, then so is everyone else's body. If my body is sacred with its stretch marks and cellulite, with or without makeup, tall or short, whatever shape my body is in today, is God's body. And there needs to be something about that that matters, truly matters. To move forward, we have to accept where we are. My hands are God's hands. And if they're fat, then God is fat. If they're skinny, then God is skinny. If they're brown, then God is brown. If they're sick, then God is sick. And if anyone's body is broken, then God's body is broken. We need to respond to the brokenness of God's people in the world. In reclaiming the value of our imperfect bodies, in accepting the value of our imperfect bodies, we claim that value for everyone. In surviving our own suffering, we can find the will to transform our lives and help others navigate their own forms of suffering. In moving toward acceptance of ourselves in our faults, in our ambitions, in our unique beauties, and our ugly tendencies, we master our ability to move past all of it. There's a part of the Gospel of Matthew that tells us, "Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Tomorrow will happen, and it will worry about itself. Change happens, sometimes slowly, and sometimes it needs to hit us in the face. Maybe this is a come to Jesus moment for our society, if you will. I don't necessarily mean that in a religious way. It's time to see where we are, is what I mean, in the grandest scheme of things, and to see where that leads the minutiae of our lives. It's time to see where we are in the grandest scheme of things, and see where that leads the minutiae of our lives. And may you find acceptance. See you next week.